No, we got a couple minutes.
On the record question.
Well, you can almost hold. I call to order the April 26, 2023 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of the previous meeting minutes.
Shall we get a roll call?
Or how about a roll call first,
All
please?
right. Steve Clevenger.
Present.
Gary Schroeder.
Here.
Tom Andrew.
Here.
Robert Novak.
Here.
Michelle Dennis.
Here.
Dustin Grove.
Here.
Ed Butts.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. And now I'll take the approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the January 25th, 2023 BZA public hearing as submitted.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business.
Thank you. We're working on new forms, amendments to the bylaws, and a new set of instructions, and we want to bring them all together. We're not quite done with the instructions, so we're going to ask to have this discussion moved to next month.
Okay. And we do have the one case that's going to be continued as well, correct, under briefing session?
Under the briefing session, there's a case that's being continued and withdrawn. BZA 2097, Robert and Julia Kulush have requested a continuance to May 24th, and BZA-2099, Z-Cube Homes has been withdrawn at the petitioner's request.
Thank you. At this time, I will take the public hearing motion.
I move there be incorporated in the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendations on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from checkpoint agencies.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I would like to have somebody have a motion to affirm our continuances from the March meeting. There were 3 cases. We don't need to name the cases, but I made a decision not to hold a meeting because all the cases were continued, and we just want to make sure that that is recognized that those cases were continued from the last meeting.
I move to affirm Steve's decision to continue the cases from the March meeting.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I will now take the continuance for today's meeting.
Did you? Okay, where are we at? Okay, I move to continue BZA 2097, Robert and Julia Coolidge, to the May 24th, 2023 ABZA meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That case will be continued to the May 24th meeting. If you're here for BZA 2097, Robert and Julia Kulo, that will be heard at our next meeting and will not be heard this evening. Also, case number 2099, ZQ Homes LLC. This is the one on Sharon Road in West Lafayette that has been withdrawn. So those two cases will not be heard this evening. There is another ZQ one that will be heard this evening. I would now like to describe our procedures for this meeting. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We'll ask staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we'll ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. And we do have a sign-in sheet for those speaking in favor or opposed if you're not the petitioner at the staff desk. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner's supporters and opponents of the petition or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. The absence of 4 votes for or against the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids to support your arguments will remain the property of the board, and cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And with that in mind, we'll take the first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2096 Tomish Developers LLC. Petitioners requesting the following variance for a proposed apartment complex in an R4W zone. Number 1, to reduce the required parking standard from the minimum 352 spaces to 192 parking spaces, or 55% of the total required. That's UZO 2-11-12, and to increase the maximum building height from 14 feet as measured from the ground to the finished floor of the uppermost level to 32 feet, UZO 211-11. The 4.212 acre site is located on the west side of Sagamore Parkway, just north of its intersection with Northwestern Avenue, specifically 2541 Neil Armstrong Drive in West Lafayette. It's Wabash 12 Northeast 23-5, and that was continued from the March 2023 meeting at petitioner's request.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. Amanda Esposito, Area Plan Commission staff. This case is a follow-up variance requests now that the property was rezoned just recently to R4W. This is on the west side, just south of the Walmart, off of Sagamore. Northwestern is right here. There are some other apartments in the area. The R4W does require a buffer yard, a 30-foot buffer yard between GB to the north, the Walmart, and this residential. It was determined by West Lafayette that the Walmart has enough to sufficiently meet their half width of the buffer yard, so the petitioner is planning on installing a 15-foot buffer yard on their northern property. The 2 variances that are being requested are for parking and for height. The parking is completely supportable since the requirements, as we have noted before, are very out of date for our parking standards, especially in an area like this one where you have access to transit, both at the Walmart parking lot here to the north And I believe there's a bus stop further to the south here off of Northwestern Avenue, not to mention the pathways that are right here, the trails. The height variance is somewhat of a relic for our R4W zone, back from a time when West Lafayette Fire Department was not able to service the taller buildings. That has since been fixed, but our zoning ordinance has not been updated to match that. So again, this is very supportable to get the desired density. One of the unique features about this property is the existence of a bit of a cow path, as you can see here, that the residents to the south have created to get to Walmart to the north. As part of this variance request, we worked with the petitioner, and were very amenable to this, and we were very glad to see it, to formalize that path by including it in their site plan here, making it a hardscape sidewalk that is also used by the residents as well as, people wishing to get to Walmart from the south. So, in regards to the ballot items, these variances are not use variances. Granting them will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. Decreased parking as well as increased height won't affect the public health and safety. The fire department can service these taller buildings these days. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Adjoining developments are either multifamily or commercial, and decreased parking, increased building heights will have no bearing on the use of the surrounding properties. Terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is not common to other properties. Requiring the developer to use outdated height and parking requirements would create an uncommon situation. Strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in unusual or unnecessary hardship. The zoning ordinance is creating that hardship in this case. It is not self-imposed or solely based on a perceived reduction or restriction on economic gain. And the variances sought do provide only the minimum relief needed to alleviate the hardship. The parking proposed would still allow each 1 and 2 bedroom unit to have 1 parking space, and each 3 bedroom unit would have 2 spaces. So they would be sufficiently served in their parking. And it is in line with other developments that we have negotiated through the plan development process. The height variance, it is the maximum height before an elevator is required by state building code, so that is the minimum relief for a height. So we are recommending approval. There is a condition stated on the staff report here, but that has already been met. You are looking at the updated site plan that includes the buffer yard to the north. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Petitioner's representative.
Good evening, Kevin Riley with Riley and Teeter and Schreier, representing the petitioners. Appreciate staff's time in reviewing this. I agree with everything that Amanda just said. Just to make sure that we cover the points, these aren't use variances. They're not going to be injurious to public health, safety, or welfare. No negative impact on adjacent properties. And then the fact that we have an outdated building height and parking standard, I think, satisfies all of the other requirements that we have to prove for a variance to be granted. I would also mention that we have discussed these variances with the city, and Chad Spitznall can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but it's our understanding the city doesn't have any issues with what we've requested. So I appreciate your approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Hearing none. Comments or questions from the board?
I have a question, and this might go more for the staff. We've heard before that it's outdated parking regulations, but we never have anything to kind of go what would be. In this situation, the parking reduction is significant. Also, with this layout, where does anybody else park? There's no street parking like some of the other properties that are in the village. There's no street parking option. The only thing that you're going to be doing is going to your neighbor's parking lots, which you shouldn't be doing. If there's enough for one car for every 1 and 2 bedroom and 2 for a 3-bedroom. What about people that are visiting, deliveries, things along that line? And once again, without any access for street parking, how does the staff come up with, we know that it's out of date, but why not let them go to, only 100 parking spots?
So the minimum required is a lot of parking. It's well known by developers, or developers have said repeatedly that, we don't need this many parking, it goes unused. We don't, I think in this case, the developer has created something that they know they need, and we let them kind of dictate how much they know that they need. The market dictates it. In this case, it's possible that many of the residents won't even own a car. In this area, that would be likely easy to do. So I imagine that people who have guests over would be able to use those spots. I don't know how they're going to be handling parking for their tenants in this development, if they're going to have assigned parking or whatnot. But I don't know, maybe David can speak a little bit more to our outdated parking standards.
We're hoping to update the ordinance soon. Until that time, we do recognize that our parking standards are, they're 25 years old, and they were never in keeping with what was needed. They've always dramatically overparked. We think that we're hearing from developers that they're needing 1 plus, maybe 1, a little over 1 parking space per unit. That's different when you're near mass transit. That's different when you're able to walk or bike to certain places. The Walmart is basically going to be the west side mass transit station after City Bus builds their new facility on the west side of that parking lot. So, and there's very little opportunity for a lack of parking in the unlikely event that happens, for that to cause problem for neighbors, because the parking, nearby parking is not necessarily accessible. So in this instance, we think that the experience of the developer is a lot more in line with what's actually practically truly needed than our ordinance, and so we're listening to them in this instance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, we've got 2 ballots.
All right, I have 7 ballots cast on variance number 1. The vote is 6 in favor, 1 against. And for variance number 2, it is 7 in favor.
Both variances have been approved, and we'll hear our next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2100 Z-Cube Homes LLC. Petitioners requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours a day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 12 guests in an R1 zone. The 5.005 acre property is located at 1500 Benson Drive, West Lafayette 23, Northeast 23-5.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. So, here we are on the west side of West Lafayette, outside of the city limits. You see here the roundabout where 26 splits off to the north and Newman goes south. The property is located off of Benson Drive, which is a private drive that serves, is it 5 or 6 homes, something like that. Most of the homes in this area are heavily wooded. The two up at the front of Benson Drive are not so much. They have just a few scattered trees around them. The area is mostly residential out here. There are some row crop production properties. And then, of course, you have the Rolls-Royce facility and then the Purdue Airport further to the south. Newman was improved whenever the roundabout was put in, but that improvement kind of stopped right here at Allison Road. So going further down Newman, it is still the old rural 2-lane road, no gutters or curbs. We have a closer up of the aerial here. You can see that the property is heavily wooded, though it sits closer up to the east side of the property line. The area right here that you see is an outdoor terraced patio. That's a garage, and then a parking area as shown on the site plan here. The garage holds 2 cars. The petitioner states that 4 cars could likely park here in the area, and then the driveway is sufficient enough to handle a number of cars, enough to sufficiently park the number of guests that would be approved with this special exception of 12, if they decide to all drive separately. In fact, one of the commitments that staff is recommending is going to say that guests shall not park on Benson Drive. So here's a few pictures of the property, the front of the house. That's looking up at the front of the house from Benson Drive, so you can see the length of it there. That's looking out at Benson Drive from the house, so you can see the neighbors that you would pass on Benson Drive whenever you're entering from Newman to get to the house. There is the outdoor patio. And this is looking along Benson Drive, standing closer to Newman. So you can see the subject house up here in the distance in the trees. It is a gravel drive. And that's just looking along Benson Drive further to the north. Duke Energy has been doing some work along this road recently. So if it's approved, the maximum occupancy of this Airbnb would be 12 persons. It is not required to be owner-occupied. That is the definition of a transient guest house. Staff is also recommending a second commitment that the dwelling only be reserved by a single booking at any given time. Regarding the findings, the UZO does authorize this special exception for a transient guest house as defined in the R1 zoning district. Requirements and development standards for the requested use, as prescribed by the UZO, will be met. When changing uses to a transient guest house, all development standards are the same as a single-family residence. Petitioner does not have any plans to change the existing structure. Granting this special exception will not subvert the general purposes served by the ordinance. It is permitted by special exception in the R1 zone and will be used as a single booked dwelling. Granting this will not materially and permanently injure other property or uses in the same district and vicinity because of traffic generation. The application states that parking can accommodate up to 10 vehicles on site. If parked at this number, it would be an increase over a standard residence, though it is staff's opinion that fewer than 10 vehicles will be present at any given time. Garage and driveway areas are sufficient to accommodate that number. In addition to that, the petitioner did put on their application that they are willing to help pay for any maintenance on this private drive as needed. Placement of outdoor lighting. The existing lights on the exterior of the buildings are sufficient to illuminate the single-family home and the driveway area. The petitioner does not plan to install any additional lights. Noise production. Petition states that outdoor activity may only occur between 7 a.m. and 11:59 p.m. and only in the backyard. If followed by guests, this would be more restrictive than a normal rental because the county does not have a noise ordinance. Hours of operation of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is the same as any other residential use. We are recommending approval with condition and commitments. Condition, they need to obtain a permit to operate a transient guest house from the County Building Commissioner's office. And the two commitments, the single-family dwelling may only be reserved by single booking at any given time, and guests of the transient guest house shall not park on Benson Drive. Happy to answer any questions.
A question real quick.
Yes.
You said recommend the following commitments. Are those part of the petition, or do we need to vote on those separately?
Yes, if you choose to do so, you would need to vote on those. They were not part of the petition.
They were not part of, okay, so, and it was not part of what we read as part of the motion. I just wanted to clarify that, so we're all on the same page. Petitioner, his or her representative. That'd be a voice vote. Yeah.
Good evening, committee. My name is Sarah Zhang, and I'm a member of Z-Cube Home LLC. I have been in rental business since 2014. My management company currently manages 160 properties locally. I have a team in my management company. Like staff includes a leasing agent, cleaning crew, maintenance contractors, gardeners, and myself. My rental management company have a good reputation with all my tenants, and have good reputation with all my tenants, and I have been no complaints from the neighbors or the HOAs. With my experience of management, I'm very positive that we will be able to handle this new Airbnb property successfully. And we started this Airbnb business like 2 years ago. My partners are also local residents. They will share more information with their experience later. About this 1500 Benson, Amanda, do you have the picture I sent to you? PowerPoint? Today. I sent to your email? Today. Yeah. Yes. Email? You don't have an email? That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. We made some renovation on this property after purchasing it. It has been vacant for a very long time, and the previous owner didn't live there. They used it as more like a work studio. It was listed as 3-bedroom, but it only has 1 room there. The 2 other rooms was halfly open previously, and this house is spacious with like 2,481 square feet, and on a 5-acre lot. After renovation, we make it like a real 4 bedrooms, large bedrooms, and a 3 full bathroom. And it's now more like, with a master suite, it's more like a family house now. So along Benson Drive, there are only 5 properties in this heavily wooded neighborhood. And then the total area of the neighborhood is 30 acres. And each property's lot range from 2 acres to 12 acres. This one is on the 5 acres lot. And this house is far away from the rest of the neighbors, and with all tall nature, like a mature trees surrounding it. Most of my guests will be parents visiting their kids at Purdue, researchers coming from Purdue for conferences or collaborations, as well as people visiting relatives at Purdue. They usually are very quiet and nice. On top of that, we will carefully review each guest's Airbnb profile, and only guests with good reviews will be allowed to book this home. We will also install Ring doorbell camera and noise detection sensor to ensure noise level remain normal. We will ask the guests to follow all the county rules regarding noise levels to prevent any disturbance to the neighbors. Like significant investment on this house will be made to improve the external and internal condition of the home to maintain a high standard of the neighborhood. In fact, we have spent many many hours, many days, and we're still doing the renovation. And we will do the outside to clean up everything outside. We'll make it look much nicer than now. And we expressed our understanding to neighbors' concern, and we plan to be a good neighbor. We will also contribute to the fund that is needed to maintain the private road Amanda just mentioned. In summary, we are very confident that this transition housing will not cause any negative impact to the neighborhood, and we will work with our neighbors to ease their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good evening, committee members and fellow neighbors. Thank you for being here, and I will introduce myself and my team, our team first, and then share our Airbnb story. My name is Shichun Zhang. That's my Chinese name. When 30 years ago I came to Purdue as an international student, I picked up my English name, Sharon, start with SH. So I will be the host for the Airbnb. For this one, actually, we're managing. We are already managing other properties. I came to Purdue in 1993, so it has been 30 years. And I studied math, computer science, and get master's degrees from both of the departments. And I would call West Lafayette my second hometown. So as Sarah mentioned, we started the Airbnb about 2 years ago. I'm like semi-retired, so I'm currently managing other transit houses. So they're all located in West Lafayette, and actually in a very close neighborhood. So the houses pretty much sit on like 0.3 acre, not like this one on 5 acre. So in the last 2 years, pretty much we host guests coming to Purdue to visit their sons and daughters for family reunion, celebrate father's 19th birthday, or do research at Purdue. So, but we fully understand our neighbors' concern. I have a neighbor running Airbnb on the same street where I live. So, for example, how we started the business. So in graduation week, it's so hard for people to find a place to stay. Some of them, they just talk to me and say, we found a place like close to Indianapolis airport. So that's how I, got the idea. I'm almost retired, so I try to do something. So also, we work with local cleaners and handymen. So far, we're happily work together, and you can see, they use their extra income to plan dream vacations and support their family. But business is business. So we state very clearly to our guests, it's be kind to your neighbors, quiet policy. There's no tolerance or no room to negotiate with that. For example, on football days, we know like 6 football days in September through November. That's really a challenging time, by my experience, because other time people come here, they don't come here for parties. They come here for a purpose. They see their sons and daughter. Even once we host a couple, their son was fighting cancer, so they came here. They really appreciate it. The house is close to Purdue campus. Sometimes we do like special accommodation. So we're doing business, but we're human beings. We help our community, so they really appreciate it. So far, in the last 2 years, through clear and effective communication with our guests and diligent monitoring, our neighbors are satisfied with what we're doing. They all had concerns, so I don't want to hide that. So I'm concerned because I have a neighbor who is doing Airbnb, so I know how I feel. So even for one property, our neighbors, I just talked to them. So we do the proactive way. So we start to talk with the neighbors. They say, introduce ourselves, particularly myself because I'm the host. So they told me they are very happy that we purchased the house and start to take care of the house, because the house, the previous owner was not a local resident. And there was always a dumpster at the front yard, and you see the grass just, and then they point that one. So that's a White House. Do you want to buy that one? So this is real life story. So when we say 24/7, it's kind of scary. But to be honest, most of our guests check in by 8 p.m. because they're normal people. They come here for business or for family. And I'm a super host. You see how, there are some standards. I don't want to just repeat that. Okay, so to cut in short, we're not, this is the Airbnb not managed by a remote host. It's by a local resident, me. My younger son studying at Purdue. Partner's kids go to the West Lafayette School. Husband is also a Purdue alumni, sports fan, So we are confident that we'll manage this property with the same high standard as we are managing other properties. And we already exchanged, my cell numbers with my current neighbors. So we wanted to work hard, to manage the properties at the same time contributing to economic and workforce development in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could sign the sheet as well, please. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? If there's no one wishing to speak in favor, anyone against the petition?
Steve, I should say that we did include 4 letters in a petition with 12 names in your packets.
Correct.
And there is one letter that we received not in time to put in the packet that has been distributed to the board members.
Thank you.
Can I ask you to put up the topographical map with your property lines? I think it had the red. Yeah, that should be. No, the one more over. That should be all right. Yeah. Hi, Josh Clumpy. I live at 1532 Benson Drive, and I'm not only here today to represent myself and my family, but I'm here to represent everybody that lives around 1500 Benson Drive. You probably have a copy of a petition signed by all that are opposed, like she just said, right? And in the spirit of time and not taking too much of yours that is needed, I was asked to speak on behalf of everybody here today. So you don't have to hear everybody over and over again. So it's pretty obvious with the petition and the personal letters that you receive that we have an enormous concern, and essentially we oppose the request. Now, first off, this has always been and should remain a single residence family home. And just to rebut quickly, Priscilla and her husband George had lived in that home for many, many years. That was their primary residence. Okay, George unfortunately passed away, and Priscilla, being a single woman, elderly, she moved away to Westminster only a few months prior to the home being sold to ZQ. So there was somebody living there. She was our neighbor and somebody that we cared for. Okay. Like I said, first off, it has always been a single-family home. Children have been raised in this neighborhood. They continue to be raised in this neighborhood. The increase of transients in and out of the neighborhood and frequenting the home increases instability for the neighborhood and causes of concerns. Transients are unknown strangers that would be in close contact with the children that live there. And as a parent of one of those children, it's a big concern to me. And secondly, not one person in this neighborhood has bought or built their home, because most of them have built their home in this neighborhood and have lived there for a long time, ever thought of the possibility of living next to a short-term rental facility. We chose this neighborhood for the seclusion, the security, the calm and quiet nature that it provides. And I know that 5 acres and heavily wooded sounds, vast and quiet. But I can hear Mr. Phillips' roosters from, 1900 Newman in my yard at 1532 Benson. I can hear Mr. Cheeseman roaring up his chainsaw to cut down the tree that fell in his yard. Okay, and he lives at 1410 or something. I can't remember. But he's one of the ones in the beginning of Benson. Though it is 5 acres and heavily wooded, we're still neighbors and we still have, interactions with each other and can hear what each other do. And all of us understand exactly why this petitioner chose this home, right? The proximity to Purdue, the sports complexes, makes it a desirable area. We know what comes with these type of facilities, and they become party houses. Transients come and go in the neighborhood at will, being loud, partying, creating heavier traffic on the private drive, and putting the very tranquility and peace and quiet that we paid for at risk. And I've been in public service in a law enforcement role for over 16 years, and my position is very much a boots on the ground. And I have dealt with many situations that involve landlords of all types. And I can tell you with certainty that most of them do not have the best interest of the neighborhood in mind. It's simply a payday for them. They don't live there, so their impact on the specific community is little concern. The way their tenants obstruct the daily life of the people that reside in the neighborhood has no effect on their lives. A short-term rental property does not go with the congruence of this neighborhood at all, and it doesn't fulfill the expectations that this tight-knit community has. And aside from the daily and the nightly disturbances that this would inevitably cause, the increased traffic on the private drive, they've talked about that before. This is a private drive. We are in charge of maintaining it. The county doesn't come and maintain it. My father and I, we plow in the winter. We grade the gravel. We fix the potholes when it's needed. We all pay our fair share of the gravel, and I'm sure the petitioner would do so as well, but it's not just money. It's hard work. It's time. And at the end of the day, this neighborhood, we're wanting to keep as a neighborhood. Transients aren't that by definition, right? They're not neighbors. We hope you keep that in mind. I will ask if you guys end up approving this, the reason I wanted that is the property line on the top. That would be mine. And obviously, I have concerns that some of that property line takes away a bit of their driveway. There has been, it's very close to the home. I would suggest, or we ask, that a proper survey be done of the property lines. That if you do approve this, they would put up no trespassing signs along the property lines to inhibit hikers who thinking it's a great day to go walk in the woods because you want to say they're confined to the backyard. I see about 5 acres of woods, a backyard there. So, well, I appreciate your time if you have any questions.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak in opposition? Sarah, did you want to rebut? Go ahead.
Yeah, like Sharon just mentioned, we will definitely work with our neighbors and then work with our guests. We will definitely put the restrictions on those noise and party. We will try. We have like another 3 Airbnb houses, and we don't have any neighbors like complain or something like that. We don't allow guests to disturb the neighbors at all. I hope this answered the questions.
Okay.
I have a question
You do have
before
a
she...
question? Okay,
Yeah, before
go
she
ahead.
leaves. We do have a condition, a recommended condition of commitment. I didn't know if the petitioner had any comment on those. It's recommended by the staff. The condition, of course, you have to receive a permit from the county, but your commitment would be single-family dwelling may only be reserved by single booking at any given time. The second commitment would be guests of the transient home shall not park on Benson Drive. Those are commitments that the staff has recommended. Do you have any comment on those 2 commitments? Are those agreeable to you, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I appreciate the approval.
Okay, so you would be agreeable to those? Okay. So I will move to amend the motion to include the condition that the petitioner receive a guest house permit from the building commissioner and then the 2 commitments that I just read.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Hope.
Oh, you do? Okay, Ed.
Can you turn on your mic?
Turn on your mic, yeah, please.
If, Mr. Klumpy also asked if they would add signs to his property line. Could that be added in? Because he asked for that. You know, when he was just up here about, if this is approved, would they put no trespassing signs along his property line there to the north, I would say? Yeah, right along there, as part of that also.
I mean, that's up, I mean, is the petitioner agreeable to that?
To do
put,
s-
we had the property owner to the north would like no trespassing signs along the property line put up.
That's okay. Yeah.
I mean, that can be and that would actually be a condition, probably not a commitment.
I agree. Do you want to amend on that?
Do you want to
I make that motion that we
add that as a
add
second?
that as a second, yeah.
I'll second it.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
It would be simple.
Sure,
Amend
just
your
to,
motion to add that.
just amend my motion to
Yeah.
add the
Yes.
condition that there be no trespassing signs on the north side of the property.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think they want it around the entire property.
Yeah. Oh, the entire,
Not just the north side, like the entire property line.
Pending a survey, obviously, to be able to mark it correctly.
Okay. So I'll once again amend my motion to approve or add that they kind of identify your property lines with some signs that say that that is their property, that they may roam while they're there. So no trespassing signs adjoining neighbors' properties.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So I amended that again.
Yes, you did.
So if we get a second.
Second.
And we have a second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good, I'm sorry.
Discussion on the the accommodation of the private drive, the petitioner will pay any costs. If we vote to approve this, the petitioner agree to pay to put concrete on all of Benson Drive? Or is, are we, if I approve, we're voting to approve this, they'll agree to maintain
I guess
any cost?
I guess I would like to ask, because I live on a private drive, and we have a homeowners association, and the gentleman that was from, can you answer the question? Do you have, how is maintenance costs handled? Do you have covenants and a homeowners association? Or?
No, we are not part of a homeowners association. We have, fortunately, like I said, been very close with everybody that has ever lived on this drive. Priscilla actually owned 2 properties on this drive. She owned 1500 and 1410, which is the one closest to Newman Road there. When she gave them up to Purdue for a scholarship for her deceased husband, PRF took over and sold the homes for a scholarship to fund the scholarship. Thankfully, we have all pitched in. We divided it up on whose property line touches what in the gravel. And essentially, my father and I do the maintenance work out of love for the neighborhood. You know, we plow everybody's driveway and then Benson Drive, and we really try to take care of everybody. And we don't charge for that. It's just the old neighbors being neighbors. So, but with the transients in and out, I mean, it is a gravel drive. You know how gravel can get beat up and people, you know, there's 290 degrees on there and people come in it fast, throw the gravel in, you know, every which way, and it would need graded more often. The potholes would grow quicker. It's just more time consuming.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess, does that answer part of your question, Tom?
Yeah, it does. I mean, my neighbors need to be neighbors. I just want to make sure if I'm voting to approve this, that it's not okay for you to just send blanket invoices.
No, right, you know. It's all divvied up on how much of the property, or how much Benson Drive touches your property usually. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so as a host, I have been messaging with our guests every day. And I fully understand Josh's concern. So, his home is the first one we walk over and talk with him. So to be honest, people come here, they don't pay $1,000 per party. So, but I can't say there's no party going on. For example, just last week, there a gentleman from Purdue. He's an ME PhD student. He said, I'm going to have 2 fellow students, in our lab to come. We want a common place to celebrate. No alcohol, no party, and we have noise monitoring. So far, we have no complaints from the current transit housing.
Okay.
Yeah, and our occupancy rate this is not a tour city, so it's a destination city. Come here for business, for family. So the use of the road, I would say, will not be more than like a regular family use it. Sometimes people do research, they just go to Purdue for a whole day and then come back home, that kind of thing. I just want to have you share it because I'm the one, send message every day, like tons of message every day.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question for staff. We have this 3 unrelated clause in our zoning ordinance, and wondering how that applies and how we're able to get around that with the transient guest rentals.
It's in the definition of a single-family dwelling, I believe, and what constitutes a family. This is going to be, we're addressing it with the commitment that it's booked by one reservation. So it's one family that's making this booking.
This is one of, the 12 people is one of the things that stands out to me, and this type of a neighborhood. Granted, the property is large, 5 acres, sound does travel far, even though that you do have space between the houses. how, 12 people is like two large families, three small families, and a house. It seems like it's turning it into a multifamily, even though it's one booking. And what prevents, if we approve this, from renting to 12 unrelated people for a whole semester? It seems a way around our per unit, because you're allowed to have 3 unrelated people in a unit.
Regardless of whether this is approved or not, it could still be used as a longer-term rental, and it would still be required to obtain the necessary permits from the building commission to operate as such. So the building commission would be looking at the building to make sure that it could house as many
Correct.
people as they're saying that it could house.
Correct, but you have a regulation, and it's not just single family, it's per unit, and a duplex has 2 units, and then a multifamily is divided into units. You're only allowed so many unrelated people in a unit.
And this is a short-term situation, it's not a long-term, so that's,
But
I
it
think
could
that's
be
the
every
difference
weekend.
between, but they're not living there. They could live there, I guess. It's less than 30 days, so they could book it for an entire 30-day period, I guess.
Right, but, it's also, I would assume, though, that you can rent it longer than the 30 days. There's nothing preventing you from renting it for a longer period of time.
But again, it would be the entire house that would be rented to one person.
Correct, but you
could have up to 12 people in it.
Up to 12 people in it, correct.
Yes.
So it then becomes a fraternity or a boarding house or...
I might be wrong here, but in that situation, they would need a different type of zoning district to operate as that kind of a longer-term rental. It's still zoned R1 for single family. So I believe that they could rent it to a single family long-term. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm trying to think out loud here as I...
Right. There's state law that determines how many people that are related can live in a particular unit, but are...
Living, that might be the
Okay.
difference here, because this is just a temporary dwelling.
They don't have, if you grant this, they don't have to use it. They can still use it as they would typically any other single-family dwelling. I think the single point of booking probably would put a natural cap on how often you would have 12 people in there, presumably not very often.
I agree.
Really,
It probably wouldn't
the
be
only
that
guard
often.
against that, I think, is if they were in fact to advertise, rent a room in this house, rent A room, B room, C room, then obviously they're going beyond the scope of any approval, and that's a zoning ordinance violation.
Right.
Enforcement is always a little bit squirrely, but that would be pretty clear. If they're on Airbnb and they're advertising, we have 2 couches and 3 rooms and a basement to rent, then that's a violation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Steve, you raise a good point that I hadn't thought about, because one of our considerations is either they can operate it as a transient guest house with more control. They have to have a permit. They have to abide by the rules, and they can lose their permit, where if they rented long-term, it's pretty hard to control some tenants. If they're in there, they're under state law, and they can't lose their permit. You'd have to deal with that another way. But, that being said, as a long-term rental, they could only have 3 unrelated people in there if it became a student rental. And so you're going from 3 to 12 is a pretty intense use on a 4-bedroom house. I don't know what anybody else is thinking, but it does seem pretty intense. It seems like you could accomplish your goal. If you figured 2 people per bedroom, you'd be at 6 or 8, and you're more than double. Maybe that's what you're saying. You're more than double what everyone else is allowed to have an occupancy, and it would lessen the impact on the neighborhood. Even though 12 is a number, not very often, I'd be more comfortable with a lower number. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
I'd be more comfortable with a lower number as well. Anyone else have comments or questions? Did you want to respond? I'll let you. Please come up on the mic or respond just to that question.
Yeah, so actually, we plan.
Come to the mic, please. That mic, no, no, no. No, you.
So we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. So actually, I was talking with our partners. We want, so far, we never had a booking more than 10 people. So actually, we want to reduce it to 10. So that's how we are setting up the bedding stuff. I don't think 12 is going to really need it. I know theoretically we can host, you can accommodate 4-bedroom, we can accommodate 12 people. I don't think we need that. So we can do 10. And also, so far, we never had a scenarios like, you have 3 different families. You can see, for example, for graduation, they have grandparents, they have parents, they have, siblings. So that's just added up. Usually, you don't have, and sometimes you do have colleagues, 2 or 3, they come over to do research. But, they don't want to share a room. They do business, they don't share a room. So so far never happened, but I cannot guarantee, but I just want to share the facts, what happened so far in the last 2 years. As I said, this is not like a tour city. So you guys, a bunch of my neighbors and colleagues all come over and just stuff in the house to save money. They pretty much like family.
We got the number. Is this?
Did you
and I guess
say,
the next.
yeah, did you state that was a 4-bedroom house?
Yeah.
4-bedroom house, okay, thank you.
And is that something that we need to then vote on as a condition? To make
Well,
that 10?
I guess
If-
we
or does
could
she just
change the
rely-
condition. We don't need their
Yeah, but we can
permission.
change, yeah.
I could not support 12 after thinking about it.
Did somebody want to?
I
make
will,
a
I'd like
motion?
to hear if anybody else has any
Okay.
ideas. I mean, you got a 4-bedroom house, you could, by state law, you could do 3 people in there. And so 12, I think, is.
Or it's by zoning
vote over-
ordinance.
By
It'd be 3
zoning
people.
ordinance.
Right.
3 unrelated. So if a 4-bedroom, if you went 6 or 8, that'd be 2 per bedroom. But I'd like to hear what other people think. What number's correct?
Any comments? Thoughts? Robert?
Gary, I agree with, I think 12 is too many. Do we have the ability to change what's in front of us as far as numbers go, or do we have to vote on 12?
I mean, the 12, I think, go ahead. I'll let
Yeah, I
you-
was going to say, yeah, you have the ability to make a decision based on conditions that you find reasonable, and if you want to put that at 10 or whatever number, then that would be passed with that condition. You have the BZA have the authority to do that. Any issues on that, Mr. Hiddle?
Eric, I think that would be a commitment because a
I agree, it's a
condition is
commitment.
meant. Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you.
But it's a number, and they have the power to do that.
Right. 12 was what was listed on the petition. There's not currently a commitment for that, but we can add a commitment to limit the number. That's my understanding.
I agree.
It's currently 12. Petitioner is considering 10, or was proposing 10.
I'll
but-
put a motion on the floor so we can discuss it. Since I
Okay.
can't decide, I will move that we add a commitment to allow 7 guests at one time. And we can discuss that and change that to 8 or 6 or whatever.
Do
So
we
we
have a
just need a
second?
second for that.
A second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Anyone have any thoughts?
I'm in favor of the 7.
It's 7 or 8, I just, if you got, you got your parents and three brothers, sisters that are married, you got 8, that's the thought. Just
2 per bedroom would be 8.
2 per bedroom would be 8, and that's,
And I don't have a problem with that. I'm just trying to get a discussion going.
I mean, 8 is definitely better than,
Well,
you
it's
know, 12.
definitely better
Okay.
than 12.
I'll move to amend my motion to 8 guests.
Second.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Do it.
Amendment, one amendment.
With the one amendment?
Yes, please. Go ahead and get a vote on that.
Oh, okay, the amendment for,
Solo,
gotcha.
yeah.
So we're changing the commitment to,
Adding a condition
Adding
to a
a-
maximum of 8 people.
of 8 people.
Yeah.
Commitment, right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're now limited to 8
That's a commitment.
as a commitment.
Now you have the other, the entire question with the 4 previous, you have the entire question now with the 4 previous conditions and commitments. I think you know what they are, but I could reread them if you want them. You know what they are?
I think we know what they are.
I think you do too.
So we're now voting to include all of the conditions and commitments as we presented.
Total of 4.
Total of 4. Or no, actually, it's a total of 5.
Total of 4.
5.
I'll go ahead and read the ones that I believe are still in play. We already have
Okay.
decided that it's going to be an 8 maximum commitment. The condition.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So condition 1 is permit needs to be obtained. 2, it can only be reserved by a single booking. 3, there's no parking on Benson Drive. And 4, there'll be no trespass signs along the entire adjoining property line.
I thought we already voted on that.
I think we have not, so
Okay.
if we vote
We'll go
on it
ahead- we'll go
twice,
ahead
so
and-
much the better.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of those 4 total conditions and commitments to each? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, awesome. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
I have 7 ballots cast, 5 yes, 2 no.
Variances has been, or the special exception has been granted, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2101, Anthony Hahn. Petitioners requesting a variance to increase the maximum gross floor area of the largest building in an A zone for uses falling under SIC 15, 16, and 17 from the required 8,000 square feet to 11,400 square feet. The 7.211 acre property is located at 617 Perry Lane, Tippecanoe 19 Northwest, 24-4, that's UZO 4-11-17, and also BZA 2098, John Schrader and Anthony Hahn. Petitioners requesting a special exception to legitimize an existing special trade contracting business, SIC 17, specifically a plumbing business in an A zone operating during daylight hours from March through October and 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. November through February every day of the week on 7.211 acres at 617 Perry Lane, Tippecanoe 19 Northwest, 24-4. Continued from the March ABZA hearing at petitioner's request.
Would you like to second, Dustin?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Haddon.
David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. This property is at 617 Perry Lane. It is a little over 7 acres, zoned agricultural, and it is, you have before you a two-pronged request. There's a special exception and a variance being requested. They both were filed, or rather the special exception was filed in response to a zoning violation intended to rectify the violation. It was discovered that there was a variance also required to go along with the special exception, so there was a continuance, and so now you have both before you tonight. Looking at the location, this is in the north central part of the county. The little blue speck right there is the site, so it's west of Interstate 65, north of the city of West Lafayette, and it is near the intersection of 50 West and 650 North. Here you see the zoning, so it is zoned A for agricultural, as is most of the property around it. There's floodplain well east of it. Here's the aerial photographs so that you can see the general development of the area. It's heavily agricultural, and this is a close-up of the site. So again, this is about 7.2 acres. The only improvement on the site is this barn here, which is approximately 11,400 square feet. And it is the subject of this request. The submitted site plan essentially shows the same thing as what is on site right now. It shows the barn in the corner and then a parking area and an existing driveway along the northern edge of the property. I think to understand this, we'll go back and look at how this area has developed over time. So we'll start 60 years ago, and there was nothing there but the county road, 50 West here, and agricultural fields. Fast forward to 1997, and the site was pretty much developed at that point as it is today. So you had a smattering of houses along the east side of this general square area here, and a home up here, and then this is the barn that we're talking about today. To 2016, not much has changed. There's been one house added here, an accessory structure. What's important to note here, I think, is that you see the orientation of the barn is it's associated with this general property. So it's a part of this house, an accessory structure, and you can see that the driveway approaches it from here. So the barn is oriented, its activity is oriented here to the north. And again, it's part of this more cohesive whole. And then you get to 2022, there's been a parcelization. This southern half of the property has been removed from this area. The barn is no longer associated with this house, and it is, you can see the activity is now happening on the east side of the barn, and then there's been this driveway extended, and then extended further north to Perry Lane. Perry Lane is a private drive, and it's kind of the initial stem of this private network that serves this area. If we superimpose the current parcel, this is what we have here. So again, the barn was removed from its original host site, if you will, and made its own thing. And here we have a picture of the barn looking from the east, so standing about right here, looking at the east. You'll notice that it's open on one side, it's enclosed on the other three sides. I think my guess, and the owner might know better, is that at some point this was probably enclosed, and then the wall was removed. That's sort of the impression I get by looking at the roughness of this eave here, but I'm not positive about that. There is a door. There is a utility door on the north side. Some photographs just to help you get acquainted with the area. This is standing on the property of the barn looking north. So this is the residential adjoiner to the north. That's that residential adjoiner's accessory structure, detached garage basically, and that's the house. This is looking at the subject barn from the east. So this is a relatively new access drive that was added. And then this is again just sort of looking across the north end of the subject property. This is a view of the Perry Drive, Perry Lane, which is the main access road to get into this area that has 6, 7, 8 homes and agricultural fields in the barn. This is the county road, the nearest public right-of-way. And then this is a look going into the property. Again, the property in question is way over here, out of sight, but this is the drive that serves the whole area. Perry Lane, again, is privately owned and privately controlled. So what you have in front of you, again, two prongs to this request. There's the variance and there's a special exception. I'm going to, with the presentation, talk about both because they're linked. When it comes time to vote, though, you'll vote first for the variance, and depending on how that goes, you'll vote for the special exception. The reason being that the findings for the special exception require that it meets all zoning ordinance requirements. It doesn't meet all zoning ordinance requirements unless you were to grant the variance. So grant of the variance would make it eligible for vote for the special exception. So what that means in practice, again, is that you just vote first for the variance after all of the testimony that you hear tonight. This is the photo that was submitted by a neighbor. This was submitted at the end of last year, I believe. So this is how the barn was being used at the time, and you can see there are a couple dump trucks, an excavator, and then some smaller equipment. And this looks like a proprietary truck. I think that they do drain tile maintenance or installation, may be involved with that, I'm not sure. But this is how the barn was outfitted at the time of the complaint. And then this is another photo submitted by a neighbor at the time of the complaint. A truck leaving the site, going down one of the private roads, kind of headed towards Perry, where it will then turn right and get out onto the county road. Here we've shown in red each of the dwellings in the area. So we've just kind of put a red box on top of the houses that are ostensibly affected by this property. And what's notable, I think, is that operationally, trucks are going to be moving from here, again, along this private drive to Perry Lane, and then going out to the public right-of-way. And so there's 5 lots improved with single-family dwellings that touch this route. And so there's up to 5 dwellings, residences that are impacted by this use. And of course, all of the dwellings were in place before the use was in place. The dwellings have been there in several cases for many, many decades. The use obviously is just here tonight to be requested. I think it's not been in place for more than a few years. Another look, a bird's eye look at Perry Lane. So you have the county road out here. This is the north-south private drive that leads into the lot, which is down here, and you can just kind of see the configuration of the houses and some of the garages in the area and their proximity to where the trucks would go. And then this is Perry Lane, and you can see that at its nearest and tightest space, and really for most of its drive, it's only about 12 feet wide. So it's originally built to handle residential, very low, very light residential traffic, and then because it served agricultural uses, it would occasionally serve for agricultural traffic as well, for tractors coming and going, but of course that's not on a daily or regular basis. So it's a pretty narrow and I think ill-equipped street to handle that kind of use. The complaint that we got from the neighbors was pretty much a single theme, and it's the traffic. I don't get the impression that there's a lot of noise emanating from the site. No one was really complaining about lighting or anything along those lines. It's simply the heavy traffic, the heavy construction vehicles that are using this route to get where they need to go. And again, they're passing by 5 lots that are improved with single-family dwellings. So our concern, and the reason we're not supportive of this request with regard to the special exception, is because one of the findings says that traffic related to the use will not cause injury to neighboring properties, and obviously that kind of truck traffic is not common to these kinds of larger lot rural residential areas, so we're not supportive of that for the special exception. With regard to the variance, the building was legal when it was built. It was an agricultural barn built decades ago. It was when this was parceled off and created into its own lot, no longer involved with this lot, And then the use changed, no longer agricultural, no longer residential, but instead commercial construction contractor. That required that this building be no more than 8,000 square feet. Let me back up a little bit. For the variance, the requirement is that this structure needs to be on a lot of at least 2 acres, which it is. It's 7.2 acres. So number 1 is met. Number 2 says the largest building on the lot can have a gross floor area no greater than 8,000 square feet if it's used in conjunction with this special construction contractor use, which is the intention. It's about 11,400 square feet, so it doesn't meet that. So our contention is that any hardship is self-imposed, and we don't support the variance either. Again, this was part of this lot originally. It was originally intended for agricultural use, and it was built in accordance with the strictures at the time. It's the fact that this was separated and put to a different use, a commercial use, and a relatively heavy commercial use, that now requires the variance. So we're supportive of neither request and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
We have 3 letters in opposition that I will pass around to the board members.
Okay, thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Could you put the slide back to the aerial map with the zoning overlay, please? Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is John Schrader, and I am here on behalf of Tony Hahn. I've met quite a few of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an associate at Ball Eggleston, and Joe Bowmanberg's been teaching me the practice of land use. I'd like to start by saying a bit about my client, Tony Hahn. He bought this property 2 years ago. He did that because the pole barn would be amenable to the uses he had in mind, and because a family farming operation was nearby, and the barn would house the equipment used for both his plumbing operation and his family farm. The staff in their comments characterized this as heavy construction equipment. The family farm uses it to repair drainage tile. A lot of it's used jointly. When Tony bought this, he didn't make the distinction between heavy construction equipment and farming equipment. I'm sure members of this board are more versed in the needs of modern farming operations than I am. They can be quite comprehensive. They don't make the distinctions of tractors and combines are over here and excavators and dump trucks are over here. It's all used as part of the farming operation, and my client believed that it would be permitted use under NA zoning. The pole barn is for storage only. It has no electrical to it. It has no water to it. This petition and special variance and special exception are to maintain the status quo of his plumbing operation. They are not to expand this in any means. It is going to stay for storage, where Tony and his colleague will go out once a day, pick up what they need, leave, and return at the end of the day. The traffic is going to be as de minimis as possible, given the nature of his operation. When I read the staff report, there were a few things that stuck out to me. Joe, and I hope you wouldn't mind me quoting him here, referred to them as philosophical holes. I was a little upset on my first reading. I think I used some stronger language that I'll just keep to myself. The first one is at the bottom of one of the pages that says, despite its A zoning, this property is located within a neighborhood with virtually all the uses along Perry Lane being residential. And Dave did a great job going into the residential use, but I think we need to focus on how that sentence begins. Despite its A zoning, in spite of the way it is zoned. I asked Amanda to pull up that slide because I believe it articulates the point quite clearly. This is agricultural zoning. It is surrounded far and wide by agricultural zoning, and the agricultural use needs to predominate. To the extent this equipment causes any disruption, it's caused by the engines that drive these. They're diesel engines. They can be loud, they can be noisy, but that's typical for the equipment that operates on an agricultural lot, and I think it's appropriate in this circumstance, and I think it is what should be reasonably expected for operation on agricultural lots. In the staff report's finding, they noted that this will not be injurious to the health, safety, or welfare of the neighbors. They noted it will not adversely affect the use and value of the property, and I can say I agree with those points, and I think those should weigh in our favor. They added that this hardship is self-imposed and that no minimum relief is needed because there is no hardship. To be clear, this would result in Mr. Hahn not being able to use this pole barn and constructing one that would meet the minimum qualifications, 8,000 square feet, give or take. I would contend that it is a hardship. That is a significant hardship and would be to anyone in this room. When Mr. Hahn bought this property, he did not believe that the pole barn would cause an issue. It had been there for 20 years. He didn't. These distinctions of nature of use, change, and parcelization. I'm beginning to understand these as I work in this field. I'm sure members of this board would feel, but most people in this county would not understand this. And yes, it was his act that did it, but I think it's a little far to say it's self-imposed. It was an honest mistake. Mr. Hahn is here before you as a proud Hoosier and a proud citizen of Tippecanoe County, and we're here because we want to get this right. This variance and this special exception are the minimum relief needed to maintain the status quo of his operation, and that is what we're here for, and we respectfully ask that this board approve both the special exception and the variance. And the variance is an increase of 3,400 feet, 11,400 in total. The minimum, the permitted assumes 2 acres with 8,000 feet. This would be an increase, a 42% increase in the maximum size, where you are more than tripling the size of the lot it is on, and I feel that is reasonable under the circumstances. Thank you. Any questions?
We may have some for you later.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
I'm John Hahn, and I'm the adjoining property owner to the south and to the west. And it made it sound like it was a high-traffic area, but it's actually a storage building. And they might go in there, Tony's might go in there in the morning and pick up a truck, and it might not come back that night. It'll go to another facility. I have equipment stored in that barn, and the last time I was back there at that barn was, I think, in early January or maybe February. Made one trip back there, but there is absolutely no heavy truck traffic back there. There might be a dump truck go back there, put in the barn, a pickup come pick the driver up, they go away for a couple, 3 days, maybe go back and get the truck. But as far as using it for a business, in and out daily, it does not get used that way. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you sign on, you're the, go ahead and sign in, please. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
So, it's kind of funny you have the Constitution hanging up there. We never would have thought we would have been sitting here today discussing if you buy a barn.
Sir?
Jake Westfall, 1727 East, 650 North. We never really thought when you buy a piece of property that the county's going to tell you what you're going to store in the property and then show up to your house or show up to the building and take pictures of it when you're not even knowing that they're even there. And then when they do show up, they drive through the neighbor's yard to get there. I mean, it's just amazing. And that was the guy that was biggest in concern, is the yard we drove through to get to the building, and even probably made him even madder. But I know for a fact that he does not drive equipment in and out of there all the time. I go back there and I service his equipment, and I'm back there like once every 3 months. Man, I mean, where does it stop with what, I mean, are there going to be, one day we're going to have a sheet on of our garage and send to you guys of what we can put in our barn at night? If we go buy a skid steer and we're a homeowner and we want to fix our driveway, or if we go buy a backhoe because we need to go move some trees because we have a lot of trees on our property? I mean, where does it stop with what we can put in our buildings and when you guys can show up and just take pictures of what's in the buildings, and then we have to come, get a lawyer, court hearing? It's not like he intentionally bought this to run a construction company. It was mainly for the farm and for the agriculture courses. And I know, I work for a lot of farmers, and I know all farmers have skid steers, backhoes, excavators, dump trucks, heavy trailers. And as I would think, if the people in the community were that concerned about it, the size of the building and how much construction's going on, when they show up today, like the people that were prior, that the whole community showed up, and you guys still passed that one, knowing the whole community was opposed to it. And this one, I mean, it's going to be the same people that drive through. Tony has the same employees. They're all vetted. Actually, there's only very few that drive trucks back there. And you know who it is, who's traveling and out, instead of new people every day that show up to the place. So that's all I got to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sir, can you sign in?
My name's Dan Hahn. I live at 1130 West, 750 North, and Tony's actually my son. And the first guy speaking was my brother, him and I farmed together. On the one picture where he showed the one end of the building where there was some doors that opened up, that's actually the biggest part of this building. There's not one thing in that part of that building that isn't agricultural. I have 7 wagons that I store corn on to feed cattle. They were in there. There's 2 wagons full of straw that was in that part of the building. There's a combine. There's the units that fit on the combine, the corn heads and the bean platforms. So in that part of the building, there was actually no construction equipment whatsoever. So I think they're kind of blowing this out of proportion of what's going in and out and making a big deal out of this. It's just not. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor?
Kevin Underwood, 6915 North, 225 West, West Lafayette. I farm and actually live to the west through the fields of this particular property. And I have obviously quite a bit of experience with our county government and what's been going on in our county for quite some time. And I think that you would all agree that most farmers are well understanding of the growth that we see going on in our community. The concern I have is with respect to the fact that we seem to give quite a few of variances to various entities that are coming in for, like the 2 that were previously passed. But then we have a long-standing business that's been going on in the community, and we want to find fault with what's going on in a particular, very seldomly used piece of property. And so that's what I would want to see as a viewpoint on this.
Thank you. Speaking in favor.
Hello, my name is Jim Fields. I'm a current Tippecanoe Township Board member, and also speaking as a son of a former county commissioner. I believe that the intent of this law was to keep people from opening businesses other than agricultural willy-nilly all over the county. But that's not what's occurring in this case. He just stores stuff there and goes there a few times a week to use it. Also, speaking as a farmer, I can assure you you're opening a rather large can of worms, because I know most farmers own construction equipment. I do myself. So where do you draw the line? Where does this end? Anyone could raise a complaint that a guy is running construction out of there if he owns a backhoe. I own a skid steer, I have a backhoe, I have heavy trucks, as do any farmers. So I don't quite understand what the beef is, because the traffic is not constant. I can assure you in the fall, if they were farming that, there's going to be trucks running out of there constantly. Granted, it's only for a few weeks out of the year, but still, it's annoying. So I just don't understand this at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good evening. Steve Ryder, my name. My family's had a contracting business in this town for over 40 years. We're also developers in this town and this county, and I also farm. So this was brought to my attention by Tony a few weeks ago, and to be honest with you, when he first did it, I listened to him and I thought it didn't sound right. But the longer I stewed on it, and as time went by, and especially the last 2 or 3 days, through countless phone calls, conversations, and text that I'm getting from other landowners and business owners in this county, last night I decided I need to come and I need to say something. There's an old thing, right's right and wrong's wrong, and the page here that starts with a 40 at the bottom, who Tony's attorney read and quoted that. I read that 3 times, and the more I read it, the more upset I get about it. Because that is, and I will quote here, it's not similar to that of a single family residence. Now, I can't believe that that was printed and put on the dock in front of everybody. It's not being discussed whether it's like a single family residence. It is zoned agricultural. So that comparison is wrong to start with. Number 2, I will go back in time a little bit. The previous owner lived there the whole time when I grew up, and I grew up 1.5 miles down the road. He farmed, and he did hay, and he had, I'm going to take a stab at it, 5 or 6 tractors. He had all kinds of wagons. He had semis. He had flatbed trucks. There was more traffic that went up and down that lane when he lived there and farmed it than what he's doing now, 2, 3 to 1. But that's still not the issue. That's one issue. The other issue is when somebody owns a business, they earn their own paycheck, they make their own living, and they go out and buy something that is a legal standing property that had a warranty deed and it was totally legal, and he owns it and decides he's going to put something in it that he owns. I strongly believe it's not this board's position to tell him that he can and cannot. And I find it extremely upsetting that a person that has moved in to the neighborhood who was not an original owner back when this farm was ran as a farm, that has an axe to grind about somebody driving in and out of the driveway, can file a grievance and force him to hire an attorney and put his hard-earned money on the line to come in here and fight for his livelihood when he's doing nothing to start with that's wrong. So I understand the board here realizes the value of somebody that is a business owner in this county, somebody that makes their living working for the public in this county. And you realize the importance of a private person's property rights. And them rights should not be allowed to be stepped on by somebody down the road that's got an axe to grind about some truck driving in and out. I'm not going to begin to say I understand why this was filed, but that in itself is wrong to start with. One person should not have the right to put the halt to somebody's business and force him to spend his money on an attorney to fight for his life over something he bought that's his. Last time I checked, we live in Tippecanoe County. We don't live in Portland or Seattle, and there's quite the difference. And I think you all on the board understand what I mean. Now, I would appreciate some concern to an honest person's property rights here, and not somebody that has an axe to grind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaking in favor.
Steve Kirko, West Lafayette, not too far from the barn. I'm not going to say a whole lot, a lot's been said, but I feel the same way. I'm not sure why we're here. These people move out of town and they buy an acre here or there and they want to control everything around them. I've put up with it at Stonehenge, other places. People come over, you're trying to farm. They don't want the dust. They don't want the traffic. They move to the country and they want to have this own utopia. This pole barn's been here for a long time. That guy knew that it was there. If he wanted control of it, he should have purchased the property. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. You've spoken already.
I agree.
The petitioner will be allowed to rebut and get with the attorney. He will be allowed to rebut afterwards. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Hearing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the petition?
My name is David Hackney. I reside at 605 Perry Lane. And I have a direct view of that image. So a small correction for Mr. Hiddle. There never has been an enclosure on that side of the building. I've lived there for 26 years. I was used to the traffic that was generated by that owner that constructed the pole barn, the previous owner to the current owner of the house north of that. But I have several concerns. I do appreciate the opportunity to voice them here. And our main concern is the degradation of property value. I had a thought on a comment that was made moments ago about a single person making a complaint. We're actually talking about 8 people. The residents of the Perry subdivision serviced by Perry Lane. 605 is in the southeast corner of Mr. Hahn's access lane connecting to Perry Lane. So Perry Lane's on my north, Mr. Hahn's access lane is on my west. I'm retired, so I'm there a lot of hours of the day. The amount of traffic that has been generated by Mr. Hahn has been grossly understated. During the 26 years that I was there, of course, there was the agricultural traffic, most of which was Mr. O'Neill's. There's not a comparison. When they talk about a vehicle going in to pick up another vehicle in the morning and then do the reverse at the end of the day, that leaves out the multiple trips that are occurring around the corner of my property daily, including Sundays. But my main concern is the degradation of the property value. Dating back to the 70s, the Perry subdivision has been a low-density residential area. The lot sizes have been 2.5 acres or greater. That ambiance has been the primary reason for people to settle in the Perry subdivision. Prospective buyers desiring this sort of ambiance likely will look elsewhere when they find out that there's a business operating out of the south end of it, traversing Perry Lane. There's truck and heavy equipment traffic that increases the dust and the noise generated. And I notice it a lot because I'm on the corner of it. The truck and heavy equipment traffic is accelerating the deterioration of the 12-foot wide gravel Perry Lane that is maintained by the homeowners. I should mention Mr. Hahn has done a modest amount of improvement on that road as the degradation occurred. Some of us participated in the February 16th, 2023 Tippecanoe Township Town Meeting that was called by the Area Plan Commission to get input from the current residents regarding the planning for the growth over the next 10 years. Presumably, the Board of Appeals has or has access to the results of that discussion. But I'll highlight a couple of the results. Some of the frequently mentioned concerns were the desire to maintain a low-traffic, quiet, rural atmosphere. And I underline the word rural because there's been a lot of talk in the last few minutes about agriculture. And the other is low-density housing. Again, concerns or interests by those folks who have purchased residences in that area over the last, must be close to 50 years. So those are two of the primary reasons the current residents chose to reside there, as just stated, the two that I just stated. It's my opinion that the approval of those requests will conflict directly with the desires expressed in the town meeting. Finally, it appears to me that Mr. Hahn and Mr. Taylor want to and have been operating a commercial business without being in an area zoned commercial. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Before I speak, I have a couple exhibits. I printed enough for you all. Can I hand those out? Is that all right? Some of which you've already seen, so I apologize. Thank you. Good evening to the board. For the record, my name is Tyler Oakes. I'm with Bose McKinney in Indianapolis, 111 Monument Circle, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. I'm here on behalf of my clients today, Kristen Carnes and Dan Sitso, and they reside at 615 Perry Lane, which is abutting the property there, the property to the north, which we learned today used to be connected to the pole barn in question. So yes, they're that. My clients adamantly oppose this special exception, and that's kind of what I'm going to focus on today is that special exception. And they do so for kind of a plethora of reasons, some of which have already been stated today. I won't go into overkill on these, but do want to address them. And I'd like to start by first looking at the last page of the handout that I gave you. You'll see there what's listed on the right as the Green Goose Plan. And this was for Perry Pines. And what this was originally was a development plan that was intended for residences to move in. You can see the tracks that are laid out there and how it's been. People move to this area, it's kind of similar to the last case, because it's out in the country, it's calm, and it's open, and it's quiet. And so this plan was what people relied on that are current residents of it now. I know people had, or a gentleman had spoke earlier that, where is the crowd? We've had letters submitted. We have people here. My clients have spoken with every person who either lives on Perry Lane or is related to Perry Lane, and it has been unanimous that all are against the passage of the special exception. And that's for a couple of reasons. We've touched on the road itself. I think what's important to address is there is no direct access from this parcel to Road 50. It is all private drive, and you saw, as David had showed earlier, or the APC, I apologize, had showed earlier, that it's about a 12-foot width on this gravel road. It is not built for commercial at all. It is purely built for residential. And the one point that I would disagree with staff, we pretty much would adopt staff's report. The one part that I would disagree with is the noise factor. Being in, as again has said in the last case, being out kind of in the country in the open, noise travels. When you factor in a gravel road with trucks of the size that you've seen, if you could flip to the picture with all the, yes, thank you. If you look at the size of those vehicles, those on a gravel road coming at 7 a.m., it's going to be pretty loud. You're going to hear it pretty far away. So respectfully, we do think the noise is a problem. It forces the members to not be able to fully enjoy their property as it was granted to them, and they have to deal with that. We also looked into, I know the gentleman prior had looked in, or had spoken about home values. We've spoken with multiple appraisers, multiple realtors who are familiar with the area, and asked them what kind of effect would a business like this going in have on homes. The answer that was the consensus was it's going to cause values to go down. Now we asked how much is it going to go down? Some said 10, some said 20, but ultimately there was no consensus on this front. And the reason is because this is kind of unprecedented. You have a subdivision here with a residential intent where you're trying to put a business in to a tucked corner in the back. So you haven't really seen this with a residential subdivision in the Tippecanoe area where you have a business in that residential area. So they were not able to give an accurate depiction of how much property values would rise or fall. Additionally, I just want to kind of quickly add in terms of the safety aspect. Most of these residences, there are kids present. There's bus stops at the end of where 50 meets Perry Lane. Kids are running around. It's an outdoor area, so there is always the concern of heavy truck traffic coming through that area, being respectful to the neighbors. And then just kind of two things to close. We'll notice with this picture especially, the Tippecanoe zoning ordinance does not define what constitutes outdoor storage, although outdoor storage has several rules and regulations that are addressed to it. I would argue that failure to enclose a building would constitute outdoor storage. With that, you have buffer yards and setbacks that are required to go along with that are not being met. This directly abuts the property to the north. And so even if it were passed, we would ask that the buffer yards need to be met and that building fails to do so. Lastly, while petitioner did address the issue with the variance that it may not be injurious to health and safety in that front, petitioner failed to address the special exception in the fact that it would materially and permanently injure property for the neighbors. This, as we stated, this is going to damage them in terms of home value. This is going to damage them in terms of safety, noise, enjoyment of their property. It's going to cause damage to the road. Ultimately, it's forcing people that moved out to the country not to be able to enjoy it. When petitioner brought this property, he saw that the residences were there, chose to do so anyway. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Your client lives to the north.
Correct.
Were they the ones that sold the property to the south?
No, sir.
They were not.
No, sir.
Did they purchase before the
Hans?
Mr. Hahn and Schrader?
Correct. They purchased before petitioner.
They did.
Yes, sir.
All right.
No, you've already spoken.
Are there any other questions? Thank you all.
Anyone else in opposition to the petition?
My name is Laura Ingwell, and I live at 6648 North 50 West. So my property is this home right here that butts up to the lot. And I just wanted to reiterate the concern about property values and increased traffic. I am fairly new to the neighborhood. I've only been there for 3 or 4 years. But the property value concerns me with this turning into commercial. So what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wishing to speak in opposition?
I would like to add a point of clarification.
You've already spoken, sir.
This is not part of my
What?
He's already spoken. If a member wants to ask.
When we get to our discussion, if a member wants to recognize you, we can allow that. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, a rebuttal?
Thank you. First, we heard a lot of concerns about property value. I will refer back to the staff report that one of the points I agreed with is they found it would not diminish the property value. The great number of people who came here to speak in favor of it reiterated that this is equipment, sights, and sounds that is typical to that of farming operations. Without hearing a specific number as to what the property values would diminish, without seeing a specific report, I will raise a suspicious eyebrow to the appraiser who is saying farming sights, sounds, equipment will diminish the value of areas nearby that are zone farming, that are nearby farming operations. Again, I think one of the points of disagreement between people over here, people over there, is just fundamentally how to look at this. This is all zoned agriculture. We have to look at this as agricultural property. There is a mechanism for having taken this and looking at it like residential, and that's getting it rezoned as residential. Single-family homes are a permitted use in agricultural areas, but we call them farmhouses for a reason. They have to be subordinate to agricultural use. If you don't want that to happen, there's a fundamental reason we're here tonight is because things have to go through the proper channels. That's why Tony Hahn is here, because he wants this to be done right. They want to have all the benefit of a quiet, bucolic area without having to get it zoned as residential. I think I heard a lot about really a myth of some quiet farmland that never existed. Mechanization of farming is a 100-year-old tradition. It has been noisy for all of our lifetimes, and they are just missing the point on that. With specific mention to the Carnes, who were represented by Mr. Oak and are to the north, again, the pole barn has been there since before the parcelization. So even though the change in use that has happened since Mr. Hahn bought it was after their purchase, the pole barn that was used to store farm equipment would have been there prior. So I don't know. I think you should take that in consideration in giving weight to his comments. And with specific mention to something Mr. Hackney said, and I think others were getting at, they're comparing the use between the predecessor, Mr. O'Neill, to Mr. Hahn and trying to illustrate that as a change in use between agriculture and Mr. Hahn's operation. That's not. It's a change between the agriculture to the extent the previous owner used, which might have been on the smaller side for a farming operation, which should be considered. And finally, this is not being changed to a commercial zone. That would require a rezoning to one of the commercial designations. This is a special exception which is a use allowed by special exception in agricultural land. It is that way in the Unified Zoning Ordinance because special contractors like plumbers were to some extent contemplated when the UZO was adopted, and I think calling it a commercial use is blowing it out of proportion because that is not how the UZO considers it. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board?
I have one, Steve,
Go ahead.
for the staff, and just to make sure I understand this. The main concern is that there's a business operating there, and in the past it was a farm use, and could it continue to be used as farming use if they just stored equipment there for farming And the main concern, it's not just farming, but a business operating there.
Yeah, it's zoned agricultural, and it could be used for farming if the farming is being conducted on site. I think where the issue comes in place here is that this, unlike most lots, certainly lots that house industrial or commercial uses, does not have access onto a public right-of-way. The only finding that we found it does not meet for the special exception is traffic, and it's unusual for a use of this nature to have to wind through a network of private streets to be able to access public right-of-way. Arguably, if this was located on the county road, I think it suddenly becomes much more supportable. But to answer your question, on-site agricultural use, yes, would be permitted, and the equipment associated with it.
Okay, where I was going was it seemed like the people that farm also had some farming equipment. If this was denied, they could continue to store their farming equipment for their farm operation. Obviously, they have more equipment than would be needed to farm this small parcel, but would be part of their larger farming operation.
I think that's true, if it is indeed farming agricultural equipment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My question is, or I guess my thought right now is that it seems to be unusual anyway that you would have agricultural equipment making its way through a private residential drive, but it is zoned agricultural there. It has been used there. And so I'm wondering, how do you make the determination between what is agricultural and what is commercial? How do you know the difference? Any other discussion, or would you like to provide some insight into that?
Well, we don't have to. They run a plumbing business. It's a construction contractor special trade, which is different than agricultural. They'll tell you that, and so that's per the ordinance. They need a special exception in order to be able to operate in any agricultural district.
Any other questions? I know that there were a couple people in the audience. I don't know if somebody would like to recognize.
I would. I don't know his name, but he wanted to make a clarification, a quick comment. Please come up.
Please come up to the mic.
Just make a quick point if you have one, please.
There was a question about the chronology of the ownership to the house immediately north of the pole barn. And I was a resident, as I said, 26 years in that area. So Jim and Joe O'Neill had all of that property and subsequently sold the portion north of the barn to another family who are the current residents. Subsequent to that, coincident with that, they sold the remaining 46 acres, including the 10-acre plot, which has now been subdivided into a 7.2 for housing development. And that current owner is an LLC named Crimson 6. And development is ongoing. The property adjacent to the property that's north of the barn is, well, no, in between where all the stripes appear. That is parceled into 2 lots for residences. The field directly behind me, that one, is also parceled for the building of a residence, as are the remaining acreage along the north extension of Perry Lane. And that's actually more than I wanted to say. If you have any more questions, though.
Thank you.
Specific.
Okay. Did you have any rebuttal on that specific point? And I know, Mr. Ryder, was your point addressed? Please come up to the mic. I'll recognize you. And please stay to the specific point that you meant to bring up.
Yeah, Steve Ryder again. Can we go to the picture that has the equipment? Okay. It's been said somebody thought that building was enclosed, and now it's opened up, which is absolutely not true. That's its original state. Number two is I can count 4 pieces of equipment and 1 trailer on there when I pick up the phone and call Jonathan and Tony and tell them to come over and do field tile work for me. They're going to take them 4 pieces of equipment and that trailer, and they're going to come to my job and do my farm field tile. So the argument that you're getting presented by these people is somebody's trying to make the distinction here of what equipment is used for what. And I have a lot better feel of this, and so does everybody on this side, what's going on here, and this just isn't right. Every one of them pieces of equipment can be tabbed farm use, drainage, tile, waterway work, surface water work, all the above. So we're arguing a point here. It gets back to the root of what we're looking at here. We're arguing a point here to try to pacify and change something. He bought it under a condition that fell under ag, and it still is ag, and it's still being used like it was used before. So I strongly urge the board to look at this as somebody can't go buy a property and somebody not like it and want to change it on them when it was.
Well, let's stick to the point, please.
Okay, well, I think that's critical. So that's my point with all this.
Okay,
thank you.
Go ahead, Gary.
So we've heard a lot of comments. One more question for staff. And we do see these from time to time in the county, and we do approve those. I think, as the staff said, when they have direct access to a county road and they're not unreasonably perceiving to affect other people. If somehow they could gain access on this property to the county road, looks like there's a farm field to the south, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but that would kind of change your consideration. Then they would have direct access.
Typically, when we're talking about direct access, we're meaning that the lot itself extends to and adjoins County Road for a certain length.
I think Gary's talking about using exemption E to add a tail to the lot over to 50 West.
I wasn't, but I know what you're saying, and I know what David is saying. It really doesn't have road frontage and is behind other properties.
Correct.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just to kind of address some of the comments that we've heard, and I agree with some of those. I mean, it is in the county, has been farming, and I think it can continue to be used at farming. The big difference is it's now a business, and that's not unusual to hear maybe in the county, but we see that in the city. That's addressed, and it's maybe unfortunate, but you know, it is there to have a public hearing that someone just can't take a piece of property and turn it into business without having a public hearing. And that's what this is, to hear what you have to say, hear what the neighbors have to say, and then consider whether that's reasonable. Thank you.
I'd also like to add, it was mentioned also about residences in ag zoning. Our ordinance has always allowed some type of minor subdivisions and parcelizations in ag zoning for the purpose of residences, and we do have a lot of residential properties in ag zone districts. Any other comments or questions? If not, we've got a ballot, or 2 ballots actually.
And if I may, before we start, since these are new ballot forms, I would encourage you very strongly to look at those ballots, to look at the documentation that you have before you, to think about what you've heard here from both sides, and to the extent that you're able, make notes that will indicate why you're voting the way you are. There are spaces for that, and I would encourage you to take advantage of those spaces. Thank you.
So the first ballot is for the variance of square footage on the building, and the second one is to operate a business out of that building. Is that correct?
That is
Yeah, the
correct.
special exception. So one's for square footage.
2101 is the one that we will vote on first for the variance. If that passes, you can go ahead and fill out the ballot. If the variance passes, then we are able to tabulate the 2098. If the variance fails, I think the 2098 fails because we don't have, it won't meet the zoning ordinance.
I agree.
2108.
Yes.
2101 is the variance.
So just vote on that, please. Just the variance.
I guess just a note to staff, if we can, on these, when it does have a petition, if it has variance or special exception, might be helpful as well. Or request one, request, or, I think you'd request one, request two, but you might put like side yard setback or something on it.
On the variance issue 2101, the vote is 7-0 in favor, yes.
Please go ahead and fill out the ballot on 2098 for the special exception.
Seven ballots cast. There are 3 in favor and 4 against the special exception.
So the special exception request has failed. And we'll go ahead and hear our next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2102, Keith Moore, Carlson Consulting Engineers. Petitioners requesting a variance to reduce the required parking standard in the GB zone from a previously granted variance. BZA 1638, minimum ratio of 0.9 spaces per 200 square feet of gross floor area to 0.8 spaces per 200 square feet of gross floor area. The UZO minimum required parking standard is currently 1 space per 200 square feet. This request is for the Walmart located on the corner of Sagamore Parkway and Cumberland Avenue, specifically 2801 Northwestern Avenue, West Lafayette, Wabash 12 Northwest, 23-5, UZA 46-3.
And we'll hear from staff, please.
All right, thank you, Amanda, APC again. Journey, if you will, back to the west side And back to Walmart. We are familiar with this area. We just heard of the variance requests for the property just to the south here in the R4W zone. This is the Walmart. We're all familiar with Walmart. Can't speak anymore. With what Walmart looks like with the large amount of parking. This is a hub for city bus. There is a current city bus stop here, close up to the store. That's the site plan here. Again, lots of parking. Just showing the bus stop. It serves 4 different bus lines currently, but there is only one spot for one bus at a time. So Walmart has worked in conjunction with City Bus, I've been told for a long time, to come up with a plan that helps to serve the region here with City Bus and the people who board here. We've been told that on an average day, they have 465 boardings onto City Bus, and it's all being served by one bus stop. So they needed to expand a little bit to increase to help with all those boardings. And in order to do so, they have to take away some of the parking spaces in the parking lot. So that is the purpose of this variance request here. So you can see that the bus stop has a trail that goes up to Cumberland here, connects to the Celery Bog just to the west. And at the time of the picture, a bus conveniently stopped there so that you could demonstrate what happens whenever the bus comes up to the bus stop. I'll show you here, where can I see it here? The proposed bus stop is going to be here. There will be bump outs for 4 buses, I believe, starting here 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's just going to be painted, I believe, on the pavement. They're not going to do any kind of curbs as far as I know. They are going to need to take up 21 spots, so it's just a reduction of 21 parking spaces. So in regards to the ballot items, the variance is not a use variance. It will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare, reducing from the current 935 spaces to the proposed 914, will increase ease of bus access, both for drivers and riders. Use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected. Neighbors won't be negatively affected by removing 21 spots. The petitioner asserts that the current number of spaces are above the number needed for this site. Terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is not common. There is no other case in the community where a site is reducing the required number of car parking spaces to allow increased bus service. So it is unique. The UZO is rather silent on parking standards when it comes to public transit. Strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in an unusual or unnecessary hardship. The development standards in the ordinance don't reconcile big box parking practices with the availability of mass transit, as in this situation. The hardship involved is not self-imposed. Reduction is solely to facilitate the increase in bus stop capacity, and the variance sought does provide only the minimum relief needed. The only spaces being removed are the spaces that are being eliminated to expand the bus loading and unloading area. They're not taking out any other spaces. So staff does recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. Petitioner or his or her representative.
Good evening, Board. My name is Victor Ramirez. I am here representing with Carlson Consulting Engineers at 7068 Ledgestone Commons, Bartlett, Tennessee. Like Amanda mentioned, we're just trying to get a variance for parking ratio to be decreased and make space for those 4 bus stops. There's no history of issue in terms of parking space availability at the Walmart. So with that, it's very short and sweet, just not taking too much of your time. If you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good evening, folks. My name is Brian Walk. I'm the manager of operations for City Bus of Greater Lafayette. Staff, thank you for summarizing the information that we would hope to present. Outside of our downtown transfer center, located about 3 blocks north of where we're standing, this particular bus stop is our busiest stop in our system, serviced by 4 routes, approximately 500 folks boarding each and every day. And upgrading this stop, as outlined with the sawtooth pattern, will help us greatly increase safety, passenger designation away from traffic, and it will help us increase mobility for ADA boarding and alighting with wheelchair ramps and access in that sense. So we would be very appreciative if you would vote in favor of our variance request here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? I do have a quick question. Are there any plans for any type of shelter or area for people to stay out of the rain?
Wonderful question. I think the biggest challenge that we have when it comes to shelters is funding. They're quite costly, especially shelters that are large enough to meet this capacity. So I would say that it is definitely, I know for a fact that this location is on a list of sites to target, but there is no timeline in place.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
Seven ballots cast in favor.
That variance is passed. And we'll hear the last case, please.
Move to hear and vote on BZA 2103, built to last. Petitioners requesting a variance to reduce the rear setback in an R1B zone from the minimum required 25 feet to 13 feet. The property is located at 3348 Shrewsbury Drive and Arbor Chase Subdivision, West Lafayette. Wabash 6 Northeast 23-4, UZO 2-3-8.
Do I have a second? Second. Have a motion and a second. Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you. This is a single residential lot. It's zoned R1B, which is a pretty compact single-family dwelling zoning district. And it is a single request with just one variance component having to do with the rear setback of a proposed addition. Here you can see the lay of the land a little bit better and a little bit more closely. This is the house, and there's an existing concrete patio in back, which will be removed, and then a new patio placed here, and then the proposed addition will almost cover the existing concrete patio there. The house currently meets the rear setback requirement of 25 feet. With the new addition, they would need this variance to allow for a rear setback of 13 feet. See the site plan that was submitted right here. New room, it'd be over the existing concrete patio, and then a new patio placed to the left. The existing patio is 16 by 14. The area known, labeled new room, would be 12 by 12, and the new patio west of the new room would be 10 by 12. This is a picture of the front of the house from the street, and then this is a picture of the rear. So this is the subject house here, And then this is a trail that runs in the back of the house, and then there's a very wide common area that runs between this section of the subdivision and this section here. Another look. This is the subject house here. There you can see the concrete patio. The addition would go right in here, and then a new concrete patio right next to it. So this is an overhead view, and you can see what's a little bit unusual in this configuration is the width of the common area here. It's about 75 feet wide from property line to property line, and there's a trail running through it. Superimpose the parcel lines on there, and then again you can see that this is all common area. And I've done my best to scale to replicate what the new addition and the new concrete patio would look like here, this being the new addition, this being the concrete patio. And I hope you can kind of see which is the reason that we're supportive of this request, is that given this open space back here, there's no problem with the decreased setback creating a sense of encroachment or unnecessary enclosure. It's kind of obscured because there's a good deal of landscaping in the area. The proposed addition is about as modest in size as you can get for a residential addition, and is in fact a little bit smaller than the existing concrete patio. And then they also have room to spare with regards to some other requirements. Maximum lot coverage would be 33%, and the ordinance allows 35%. And minimum green space, the requirement is 35%, and this lot actually provides 58%. So with that, we are supportive of this request. I would note, we just learned that there may be covenants involved that could be broken by this request. And I think, as you know, covenants are civil contracts between individual private parties, and they're not enforceable by this body or by the Area Plan Commission. We certainly hope that covenants wouldn't be ignored, or there's enforcement that can be done privately with regard to that could stop this from happening, but they just don't play a role into the decision as to whether or not a given variance meets findings. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
We do include one letter in opposition in your packet. There are 3 letters and 1 petition with 17 names being passed around to the board.
Thank you. Petitioner or his or her representative.
Hello, Board. My name's Jim Ramicle with Built to Last. I'm here on behalf of Michael and Olga Pawlowski. Basically asking for a setback from 25 feet to 13 feet. We've done everything, as you can see through the photos, of trying to keep everything within reason. The green space is really, if you did all the measurements, within a % or 2 of what it was originally. The house still fits underneath the requirements of square footage, and really, like I said, it's pretty, for us. It's cut and dry. Obviously, the homeowner association thing is another battle itself. But we've done everything to keep everything where it should be, and just asking for that one setback for 25 to 13. Really, like I said, for me, it's cut and dry. If you guys got any question for me.
We might later.
All right.
Thank you. Yep. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hello, my name is Olga Pawlowska, and my address is 334 Shrewsbury Drive. I'm one of the owners. I would like to represent my family, and I would like Pawlowski family to stand up. Here's my family. There are 4 of us. I would like to explain why do we want to add this room, so it will be clear to everybody that it's not just for leisure. It's because both of us, Michael and I, we work from home. This house has 3 bedrooms and 1 den room. So my husband works his office in the den room. I currently work from a bedroom because my job is partially remote, partially in person. I go 1 day per week to Purdue University, and 4 days I work from home. The nature of my job is that I work with sensitive information, so I have to have a closed room with a door, and I have to kind of, work one-on-one sometimes with our students. So that's why I do need a room to continue my successful job at Purdue. So what I wanted to say is there is a choice. We can invest and buy a new house, a bigger house. But my husband and I, we both are from Ukraine, and we decided that we will support lots of Ukrainian people around the world instead of investing into, a bigger house and paying a bigger mortgage. So since the war started, we've been supporting Ukrainian people all around the world. We supported an orphanage in Ukraine for 50 kids who were affected by the war. So it is our choice to pay, $100 every month to support people who are really in need instead of, investing in a bigger house and have leisure for our family. So if you have any questions to me, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hi, I'm Michael Povolotsky, owner of the house. I would like to add, one more thing. People will say us, why don't you buy, a huge house, with 4 bedrooms? I think we must also be considerate of the nature, of the ecological aspect, and the warming, of the planet. We would like, to have, a small, house, which, fits us and use less, energy, gas, and water. Well, that's why we ask you to allow us a small addition, instead of us buying a big house. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition?
Good evening. My name is Don Schneck. I live at 3622 Cardigan Lane in West Lafayette, 47906. I am the treasurer of the Arbor Chase Homeowners Association, and the property at 3348 Shrewsbury falls within our guidance. The neighbors of Arbor Chase who will be negatively affected by this request sincerely appreciate being allowed time to present our concerns to this board. This variance, if granted, will cause injury to the general welfare of our community. If the board approves the variance, the rest of the homeowners of Arbor Chase will be saddled with the additional responsibility of paying our lawyer to defend the HOA rules. These are the very same rules that the Provolotskis had every reason to know when they built their house in the first place. They may say they didn't know the HOA or Tippecanoe zoning ordinance rules, but lack of knowledge of the law does not justify violating it. The value of the area around the applicant property will be affected in a substantially adverse manner in the following ways. The value of all other properties will be decreased. For some property owners, their views of the community open space will be inhibited. The carefully designed aesthetics of the community open space and its interaction with the homes around it will be negatively affected. The unsuitable changes allowed to this property will discourage future neighbors and families from being able to buy a home here in confidence. And lastly, precedent will be set that will encourage future adverse requests to violate the covenants of our homeowner association. Their situation is common and similar to other properties in this subdivision where the average square footage of property is 6,900 square feet, and the average square footage of homes is approximately 1,900 square feet. If they wanted more square footage in their home, they could have built a basement or added space upstairs, as several other homeowners chose to do. Based on our understanding of an ordinance-defined unusual or unnecessary hardship, we do not believe that the Provolotsky situation meets it. The Provolotskys' perceived need for this variance to change the footprint of their home is not caused by the neighbors. It is not caused by the homeowners association or any other external factors. It is solely self-imposed. By denying this variance, the establishment or from established ordinance, this board will be considering the rights of many homeowners in Arbor Chase and not solely the perceived needs of one homeowner. We respectfully request that your vote reflect the rights of the many homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Richard Bossing, 3336 Shrewsbury Drive. That is 3 houses east of the house in question. I have been requested to do this on behalf of about 8 houses in this area that are all signing the petition against this and also forwarded letters stating this. We do not think it is appropriate from the standpoint that when you do everything, we get a complete packet of what we can do and what we can't do for the homeowners association. I had to request when I built my home in 2009, I wanted to move it 18 inches farther back on the north end when I was building the house. The homeowners association said no, because you'll violate the 25-foot line and you cannot do that, and it was denied. And now to take something 12 by 12 and put back there because somebody has a feeling they need it, those of us who are there, everything in this line of houses, as you can see, is well set up. The lines are drawn and everything is there. We are also concerned with the fact if you allow this to be acted upon by the Area Plan Commission, everybody can then ignore the HOA because they appeared before the HOA and it was voted down. And that's why they are here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. A chance to rebut.
I do understand HOA's concerns of, aesthetics, making sure the house fits the neighborhood. Again, the sight lines are not going to be obscured. Their house already sets further back than everybody else's house. There is obviously contention over there, and I think that's more on an HOA side, not on the board side. We're just asking for the setback. Again, staff agrees with us. There's plenty of green space. We're not going to intrude on anything that's not already there. There's already a 16 by 14 pad there. The actual structure is 4 foot smaller than what's already there. Again, the HOA thing is a different matter. The matter that we're asking you guys is to have the setback, and then we'll have to handle that. But as the covenants, I don't understand that, from what I've seen in the covenants, that there's no mention of no room additions, and we'll do everything aesthetically wise for the HOA. Any questions?
We may have some in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions, comments from the board? I guess I do have one. Are fences allowed in the neighborhood? Are fences allowed in the neighborhood?
No, not in this section.
Not in that section. Any other questions from the board? Gary?
I have a question for staff. Speaking to the 25-foot setback that's in the ordinance, is that just for structures or patios allowed? As I look at the photos up there, I see trees that are near the property line and maybe a round planter, I can't see what that is, in the upper right-hand corner.
The 25
Landscaping is all the way to the property line. So what is and what is not allowed?
The 25-foot setback is for the primary use structure on the lot, and currently the house is built right up to that 25-foot setback.
Okay, it's primary structure. Thank you.
If somebody would like to recognize the gentleman or not.
If you have a brief comment, please.
Yes, Larry Swanson. I live on Shrewsbury. Sorry. I just wanted to point out that
Why don't you stay at the microphone so we can get you on the record, please?
the yellow represents those people who wish to deny the acceptance of this variance. And it includes folks behind them on the other side of the common area. That's the point I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to, lost my train of thought there, but I guess I did want to point out that this is really the first step. I mean, if you really want the variance before you go before the HOA, I mean, if it's not there, that way you can argue whether or not to change the covenants. That then again is up to the homeowners association to ultimately deny whether or not we grant the variance. It's up to the homeowners association to ultimately decide whether or not they can build this. So it's not. Any other questions? We have a ballot. I'll recognize.
Hold on to ballots, please.
Yeah, hold on to the ballots.
I just wanted to add that I've heard that the yellow line is for the houses who are against our petition. I personally spoke with our neighbor on the left, and she said that HOA people came to her house and they asked her to sign a petition and say that they are against, and she said we are not against it. So I would question this. And the other comment I wanted to say is that our house is on a curve. That is why we will never, and the other picture shows it really clearly, that we will not be like a distraction for the sunshine for any houses. So, and we also, I'm not sure how many houses do we have in our Arbor Chase subdivision, but 17 is really not the majority. And the last point is that I'm not understanding what kind of rule we are breaking, because the HOA didn't really point on any actual rule we are going to break. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a ballot.
Seven ballots cast, 6 in favor, 1 against.
So the variance has passed. And I would like to recognize Dr. Steinhardt and his class of land use. I think it's soils and land use, is it?
Oh, yes. Well, thank you very much. I'm Gary Steinhardt, 2602 Nottingham Place, West Lafayette, Indiana, in agronomy. I teach a class in soils and land use. And last week we were at the Area Plan Commission, and today we're here with the Board of Zoning Appeals. And it's very important, I think, in their education and understanding of land use, how important these boards are in terms of making decisions and how important it is, and that you folks are willing to do this essentially uncompensated and making very difficult decisions that sometimes are popular and oftentimes are not. And if you did have a few moments to just visit with them afterwards, those of you that are able to, I'd certainly appreciate it, because I think it's important for them to meet people who have an interest in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any administrative matters?
Nope.
Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. And I also would like to welcome Dustin at his first meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. We're not all this long.
Yeah. This is a little bit longer than normal. And I'll take our last motion, please.
One quick question before
Sure,
the
go ahead.
motion. I noticed Mr. Klumpke, Josh, submitted a letter and also spoke. Evidently, since we don't read letters, you can do both. Is that?
Is that true or not?
The bylaws were changed in January to take out the restriction that a letter writer could not speak.
Since
So
it was not
they-
read,
The
okay.
bylaws allow them to speak if they write a letter now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. I was wondering,
Good.
I was looking to see if he had written a letter and I didn't see it, but I was just doing it real quick. But thanks for bringing that up, Gary.
Ready for the last motion?
Ready for the last motion.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
This conference is no longer being recorded.